Good Friday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready for a 1 o'clock Sunday kickoff against Pittsburgh Steelers down in Pittsburgh. But when you're not winning, all kinds of other news comes to the forefront. So Jadeveon Clowney told our Mary Kay Cabot, cleveland.com's Mary Kay Cabot, frequent guest on the show, he is 95% sure he won't be back next year, needs to be around somebody that, quote, believes in me. And we go into that article that Mary Kay wrote. Root cause of the unhappiness which has lingered throughout the season is he feels the Browns have removed him from favorable matchups at various points throughout the season and put Myles Garrett on lesser offensive linemen instead to showcase their star. He goes on to say, y'all are trying to get somebody into the Hall of Fame when all that matters is winning. Everybody got here for a reason. We can all make plays. I know who I am. He also went on to say that he did not one of the things that upset him in that article was being flipped in the Ravens game, and he only made himself available on third downs, all kind of concerning. The Browns sent him home today. Mary Kay Cabot tweeted that out. Won't practice today. Kevin Stefanski was asked about and talked about the whole Jadeveon Clowney situation during his media availability.
I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of guys. JD's somebody that I respect. He's a veteran. We've had conversations, yes, but I just don't think it's fair in this setting. And I understand the questions, I do, but I just think it's fair to our team that we keep those conversations internal. You know, I know that locker room. I know what our guys are about. I think throughout the course of the season, you have things that come up, and you trust in your leaders in the locker room.
You address the team as a whole about this at all, or the defense?
Yes, I discuss a lot of things with the team, individually, collectively, all those things. But I just think it's, and I understand why you're asking, but I just think it's important that things that are in this building stay in this building. That's what we do.
With that, let's welcome in G. Bush, host of 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, also the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. G. Bush, hey, I got to tell you, I've been saying they need to put guys in situations to be successful, and if you're moving Myles Garrett into a better matchup, sign me up for that every game, twice during important games.
This is, you know, you kind of hit on it at the top of the hour. You know, this is a situation where we always talk about it. It's putting people in positions to make plays. And when you're not winning football games, you know, a lot of people said, oh, you know, Joe Woods and everything is okay. And, you know, everything, they'll believe in Joe Woods. And frankly, I've been saying this for 2 years. When you are a coach and a coaching staff and you don't have a good line of communication with your players, things like this happen, right? This seems like something that could have been resolved. This could have been something that was handled very easily. And Myles Garrett, I believe, we probably will go over it. Myles Garrett made the comments like he could have sat down with us and talked to the coaches or myself if he felt like that from the jump. One of the things that I've always said, and it hurts coaches, is not being good communicators, not being people that can understand body language, human nature, and then going around and tweaking their coaching and their teaching model in order to reach certain players. Jadeveon Clowney is a former first-round pick, and he's basically saying, hey, look, you guys are putting Myles Garrett on a worse tackle or a tackle that isn't as good, and I'm catching, you know, people talk about he's getting double-teamed. I'm catching the best tackle every single week. You know what? If the Browns were winning football games, nobody would say anything because Clowney would be like, hey, well, look, I'm going to only got 2 sacks this year, but we're going to the playoffs. I'm on a winning team, and guess what? I can't even say nothing. But when this stuff start happening, you got 6 wins, 5 wins, all that kind of stuff, you're going to have people saying, well, if I'm going to not be winning, why am I here? I need to be getting production then. And so that's the thing that you run into when your team is not productive. And for Jadeveon Clowney, we always knew Jadeveon Clowney was more of a hired gun. He's an outlaw. He's a renegade. He's a person who's going to go to the highest bidder. He's going to come. You know what he's going to give you. You know what he's not going to give you. You're not counting on Jadeveon Clowney to give rah-rah speeches in the locker room. You're not counting on him to be there for OTAs. So, there's some things players need to say and keep it to themselves, because at the end of the day, this is a business. You're going to want to go to another team and get paid again. So the best thing that you can do is finish out the season, play, whatever role they ask you to play. And then when the season's over and you move on and you go to another place, you can say, hey, I really felt that they didn't do a good enough job of putting me in a position to play. But then again, hey, that's another coaching staff. I'm ready for a new day, new shot here, new opportunity. I think that you're better off serving doing that than burning the whole organization down prior to leaving. And now they're going to look at you, for the most part, as an unproductive, highly injury-prone guy that might be a headache in the locker room, and that does not spell $10 million next year.
No, and he's played his last. I would be shocked. Kevin Stefanski said he's decided if he's going to play or not. Wouldn't share it during media availability. I don't think he's going on. I don't think he's on that bus to Pittsburgh.
Nor should he.
No,
nor should he.
You're right.
He basically said he was checked out.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. As you might guess, a lot of people have some opinions. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. Calling in about the Jadeveon Clowney situation. Now, with all due respect to his caliber of play, what organization wouldn't feature their generational talent? I don't think I ever heard of a defensive end complaining that he's getting moved around. I mean, you move the edge players around so they can create mismatched opportunities. And for Clowney to say that he doesn't appreciate that and feels like he's devalued in the system is strange. Obviously, this is an indictment on Woods and his inability to put players in the best position to succeed. But Clowney has to realize that he's 30 years old, and the Browns will feature Myles and let him dominate the game more so than they want Clowney to. Yes, he is right when he said that it should be about winning, not trying to get somebody into the Hall of Fame. But in my opinion, moving them around is a way to win. How do you feel about this? Do you think Clowney has a valid reason, or is just complaining because he knows this will affect his next contract? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I don't think anything that Jadeveon Clowney said in that article is about winning whatsoever. I think it's about him trying to explain his production, which hasn't been great this year. 2 sacks. That's all that is.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. He's trying to hedge his bet on that one. You know what I'm saying? See, this is the thing that you get. We talk about Joe Woods a lot, and I worried about this a little bit to an extent. Is that when people don't respect who's coaching them, people don't respect what you bring to the table, your adjustments, your football knowledge. You start to have people, talking out of turn, jumping out of order. We've seen it with Cade York. He's on the sideline. I think Stefanski was moving around, and he said he wanted him to kick a field goal, and Stefanski wouldn't, and so he was upset at the end of regulation, and he was just telling him, why won't you let me kick it? That's a kicker. We've had Myles Garrett had some issues with not reporting where he was at. He got suspended, bench for a week. Then you got Jadeveon Clowney. So, all of these things are an indictment on the way people act when they see the ship falling. If you ask yourself, would this go on in other organizations? The answer is no. You wouldn't see this in Baltimore. You wouldn't see it in Pittsburgh. And they wouldn't do those type things either. Clowney is a guy who is his strong suit is his run ability, stopping the run, and quick inside moves and penetration. He's never been what you call an elite pass rusher, does not have elite bend, does not have elite, body control to get around the hoops. He is a really good athlete. But what Clowney was kind of actually saying, and it's an indictment on him, is he's saying that they got to put him in specific special situations in order for him to manufacture sacks. Because to be honest with you, if you saying he just said that he doesn't think the coaches understand that he can make plays. Well, if you were number 1 pick and you feel like you're a player that makes plays, why would you care which tackle's on you? Yeah. I don't care who. Hey, why you care where Myles Garrett gets switched? I can make plays just like he can. So it don't matter if I got the left tackle, the right tackle, the guard. I feel confident in my ability to get to the passer. Nobody says that.
Well, and the other thing is if you truly care about winning, okay, put Myles Garrett in a situation where he can get to the quarterback, because that's going to help us win. That's the troubling part of it all.
It's one of those things where he didn't even, you could tell from Myles Garrett's comments, he was blindsided by it a little bit. I think the comment that really stuck in his craw was, you trying to put somebody in the Hall of Fame. And it's like, don't diminish what I'm doing to bring light to your situation. Yep. If you feel like you're not getting the opportunity, stick to talking about the opportunities that you're not getting and why you don't like that. But don't go pivot towards Myles Garrett and say, oh, like it's some big grand conspiracy theory where they're putting an average player that needs a stats boosted in the Hall of Fame. That comes off as like you being real petty, and like that's a subliminal shot. I didn't like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Garrett talked about Clowney's perception that the Browns are catering to Myles Garrett.
I think everyone's concerned about winning games, and I disagree with seeing it that way. I think the guys in our room and really the guys in the organization are so focused. This season's been on winning and getting everyone good matchups and trying to get everyone a way to win. It's not just trying to get me good looks or someone in particular. We're all trying to find a way to win and all trying to get some success on the field because everyone's trying to get towards the postseason and the Super Bowl.
Myles, what's your relationship with Jadeveon? You guys seem to be really good friends. Is that still the case?
I mean, it's always been cordial. I mean, I always have fun talking. It's just never been a problem, and it's never been personal. I don't take his comments personally, and it's just the nature of the beast.
And again, G. Bush, you got to find ways. I want the Browns to find more ways to get Denzel Ward making plays, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah making plays, Myles Garrett making plays.
Yeah, and Myles, you kind of feel a little sorry for him, but it's a business. He lobbied a lot for Jadeveon Clowney. He lobbied a lot last year. You went to bat for him, when it didn't look like he was going to be back, and he said he was going to be gone. And I know those guys talk a lot. I know those guys have been around each other a lot in the offseason. So you could tell that Myles Garrett is a little disappointed in his heart because he's like, man, dog, you didn't even have to go that route. Like, we could have just, talked it out and said, hey, it's better for me to go somewhere where I get more opportunities. That's cool. But, like, you didn't have to throw me in there. I will say this, though. When you have communication, and I keep saying it is the key to the foundation for everything, relationships, marriages, business partnerships, all the above. And one thing that I got to keep saying and I got to come back to, and it sits with Kevin Stefanski, is if you look at the trajectory of how he's been here, look how many people that the Cleveland Browns have to sit or send away during a season or at some point. Odell Beckham Jr., they kind of like exiled middle of the year. Even back before that, you look at David Njoku, who wanted to, be out, and he wanted to leave because he felt he wasn't getting opportunities. You look at the situation this year with Kareem Hunt. He sat out for a little bit and felt like he wasn't getting used correctly. You go all the way down to Myles Garrett, who's had some issues reporting where he's been at. He's made some comments about having adjustments. And then you now have exiled and Jadeveon Clowney. You sent him away with one game left in the season. Not to mention you had some issues with Jarvis Landry at the end of your time here. And all of those things, for me, show you that there was a lack of communication structurally in that building because you continue to have to send people away during the middle of the season. That should show you that you need to work on how it is I motivate my guys and understanding what makes guys tick, because that's just as important as whether they got a skill set to fit your organization. Do they have the mindset, and can you tweak it if they don't fit the culture of what you're trying to do?
G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Myles Garrett. Also, take a look at areas the Browns need to improve moving into 2023. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. So Myles Garrett was asked if he would welcome back Jadeveon Clowney if the Browns decide to re-sign him.
We just want volunteers, not hostages.
Did you know he was unhappy?
Did I know he was unhappy? I mean, I knew he was frustrated. I mean, we've all been frustrated. We're not winning. And I know he wants to produce more. Hell, I want to produce more. We all want to do more. You always feel like you can do more, especially when you're not winning. And everyone feels that when you come in here and the result stays the same, or you give up one that you feel like you could have gotten. So everyone has that sense of disappointment and regret for some plays, and everyone handles it a different way.
And G. Bush, you can tell they feel like it's a wasted year. What that says is it's a wasted year.
That's exactly what it was. It was definitely a wasted year when you take a look at what happened. I call it a gentleman's punt. You did your best. You tried to do some things, but it was not a situation where you got it in order where you could come out and win football games. It was painful to watch all this year. And as we go into the Pittsburgh Steelers games, I'm still over here thinking to myself, wow, this was a wasted year. I can't point to anything. Deshaun Watson had a couple games. 2 of the games was weather games. I didn't get to see Nick Chubb win a rushing title. I don't really know what I got on the defensive line. All our linebackers are hurt. So that frustration trickles down to the remaining players on the team. And one thing the Browns organization has to understand, because, I call myself the people's champ. I stay in the streets. I'm at the grocery stores, the Giant Eagles, the Sam's Clubs. I'm everywhere, man. Heinen's, I'm everywhere. And every time they see me, they say, G. Bush, man, I can't do it no more. I can't do it no more. Next year, they keep preaching this to us. Next year, we'll find some stuff. We'll get some people in the draft, and it's the same nasty taste in your mouth every single year. You had a question about Baker Mayfield going into the offseason. You still got questions about quarterback. You still figured out, hey, do we need a receiver? We needed a receiver at the end of last year. You still need one, right? And we've been looking for people to go with Myles Garrett for how long? We back to looking for another defensive end to go with Myles Garrett, and we can't stop the run and can't tackle. So these themes roll on, and people start to realize, look, man, I'm getting older. I saw my first gray hairs the other day, and people don't have no patience to be waiting, talking about next year, and the players are frustrated with that. So the organization has to know if they come out next year and it's slow, it's sluggish, there is going to be hell to pay, because there's going to be a lot of people that's just not paying attention to it, and they already start doing the hot seat.
Yeah, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. The other thing that everybody now starts asking about, because you're in year 3 now, you're going into year 4 of Kevin Stefanski.
Right.
So Garrett was asked about the culture. Here's Myles Garrett on the culture.
How we respond, we'll show what the culture is. It's all in action. And if we're a brotherhood like we say we are, then we'll rally together, and we'll put up a hell of a fight, and we'll get a win in Pittsburgh. So we got to show it.
Myles, going off of that, why do you think so many players have spoken out since last year? It's something that happens consistently. It's not necessarily normal in this league. What needs to change for you guys to feel comfortable that things don't need to be aired out so to speak?
There's got to be better communication across the board, and there's got to be a steady dose of leadership from the top down, and we've got to squash all this before it comes to a figurehead like this. And there shouldn't be a lot of instances where stuff like this happens, especially with this group of guys. How talented we are, and the level of leadership that we do have here, from all across the board.
G. Bush, the older you get, you realize every business is a people business, and that's what he's saying. When he's saying communication and leadership, it's about being able to tell people what you expect and hold them accountable.
There it is. And sometimes I do these, these long talks, and I create these videos, and I just went back to entertain myself and go back and look at Pat Sherber and Chazinski and just look at some of the guys, Patton, Hugh Jackson. If you go back and rewind their press conferences and you just put them together and shape them together, they all sound the same. They all sound very similar. They're dismissive. There's no life to it. There's a little sarcasm in the way they answer your questions. They make people feel like you're the dumbest people in the room when you're asking questions that just run-of-the-middle questions that are regular football 101 questions. They refuse to answer them as if those questions are below them. And I always think, why don't people learn from their predecessors? You don't have to make the same mistakes that Hugh Jackson did. Like, you don't have to make the same mistakes as Eric Mangini did, right? You can learn from those mistakes and then capitalize on what you do best. And so when I'm sitting here watching this Cleveland Browns team, and they're talking about leadership from the top down, why are we not having open dialogue about what are we supposed to be doing on defense? Why are you giving up these points? How many points are you giving up? Because what'll happen is people tune you out. After a while, you realize, hey, Joe Woods is our defensive coordinator. We're getting eaten up alive by run-of-the-mill quarterbacks. And then here's the big crux of the issue. All the teams that happened before the season that they said were terrible are better than you. So I look at the last week, right? And we're like, oh, man, can the Browns get back into it? Now, remember this. They don't have a tiebreaker against anybody. They lost to the Patriots. You lost to the Jets. You lost to the Chargers. You lost to the Dolphins. Anybody that has a chance of being in the playoffs, and you go look at those teams, and as they melt down the backstretch and lose game after game, you look at the Browns and say, you might have still been in contention. All you had to do was beat the Saints with Andy Dalton in a negative 30-degree game, and Taysom Hill beat you. Those things get frustrating, and people just start tuning people out. I can't do it no more.
All right, before I let you go, what area of the Browns needs to be addressed the most to make 2023 different? So 2023 isn't a wait till next year.
I've already been stewing in my mind over this. It's about defensive tackles, and it's about another receiver. The reason why I would slightly lean towards going to get the best receiver, a speed receiver I can, is because to me, you got to do everything you can to invest in Deshaun Watson. Amari Cooper had a great year this year. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a fine receiver, number 2 guy, sweet. But when you go back and you want to unlock all of the attributes of Deshaun Watson, you got to go get you a Brandon Cooks. You got to go get you somebody that can run past people and catch the ball. Anthony Schwartz. You need somebody that can get vertical, catch the football, and unlock one of his best traits, which is the deep ball. I think the Browns need to score more. I think they need to have more explosive plays. And I think they need to revamp some of the concepts they have, because methodically plotting down the field, throwing 5-yard stop routes and throwing stuff like that, that's not going to work on a sustained period of time. So for me, a close second out of that is defensive tackles. If they can get Daron Payne out of Washington, he'll be a free agent, but I think they might franchise tag him or sign him to a long-term deal. I think defensive line is a huge thing for them. And now you're going to need a double defensive end unless you think Alex Wright is the guy that's going to play well over there for you. So for me, I would say close is a receiver. 2, not coming up that far behind his defensive tackle. And I think they need linebacker help as well. So we'll see if guys like Reggie Ragland and Fields can, stick on this roster. But I say it's all about the points. It's all about the throwing game. Give me a receiver and see what he can do in 2023.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think you don't need to go 5 yards a pop when you have the quarterback that the Browns now have. So getting that receiver might make it a high-powered offense. G. Bush, as always, man, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Have a good day.
You too. G. Bush, make sure you check him out. It's in 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, Saturdays from 8 until noon. You can also catch him Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show 11 to 1 Monday through Friday. We are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, film breakdown. Lance Reisland joins us. What to look for against the Steelers on both offense and defense. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns. Time for our film breakdown segment. Browns getting ready to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Lance, when you talk about the Steelers, that defense kind of jumps off the page a little bit. That's something the Browns have to be concerned about.
Yeah, when you watch the defense from early in the year till now, T.J. Watt is a Myles Garrett type guy where he is a absolute game wrecker. They're 7-2 when he's in the game. He's just so dynamic. One of the interesting things, he lines up on the offense's right side most of the time, which is going to be where the Browns are with Conklin possibly hurt and Hudson have to get in there. So he is, and then he's just one part of a very good line with Hayward and Ogunjobi. Alex Highsmith on the other side. They got, Spillane is playing really good inside at linebacker. They have Fitzpatrick, who's an outstanding safety. I would say not a weakness, but an area they can attack would be those corners. But they're pretty solid as well. Sutton's pretty good. But that's probably the weakest part of their defense is those corners.
Well, and you mentioned T.J. Watt injured at the beginning of the season, but boy, has he come back and you mentioned kind of a Myles Garrett thing. The first thing we're going to take a look at is you got to find a way to block him off the edge, and that's going to present a problem for the Browns.
Well, one of the things he does very, very well is that he uses this ghost rush, they call it, and he actually doesn't even engage the offensive lineman. He just uses his bend and his ability to rip underneath, and it's really, really impressive. The Browns are absolutely going to have to help whoever out there at right tackle. If they're in true passing situations, they're absolutely going to have to help every single time. If they don't help every time, and he had, he had 4 tackles, he had a sack, he had 2 tackles for a loss. Just very, very dominant in the game, and he's just always around the football. He's always, you watch the game, he's almost getting home to Huntley the entire game. So they're going to have to account for him every single snap.
The other thing that you can kind of tell just looking at that lineup defensively against the Ravens, they got a lot of guys at the line of scrimmage, and that, again, will create some issues for the Browns. Let's take a look. First one we're going to look at is a 5-man front. What do you see here, and what do you see the Browns as potentially being able to do?
Well, the Steelers did a little something into their traditional odd front, so everybody's going to that odder type front over the last 5 to 10 years, and that's a Steeler tradition. They've always covered that nose against the Ravens, which I think the Browns will see too. They actually went to a 6-man front. They went to an even front a little bit as well. So this is the odd front, and my point is I think they're going to have to run their gap scheme. By covering the nose or having that many guys on the line of scrimmage, when you run zone, you lose your double teams. So without those double teams for the Browns, their zone game is not going to be as good. So this is a gap scheme here. A gap scheme allows those guys to come off the ball running. They'll take a double team if it's there, but with so many guys on the line of scrimmage, they basically step with their inside foot, play side. They come downhill running. Those backside guard and tacklers come. It simplifies the scheme for the offensive line, allows them to get off the ball and kind of move people with all those people in there without thinking who has to come off in the double team. So this is just a guard tackle counter. The Ravens had a lot of success running this counter the other night.
So the other thing that you kind of mentioned there is that's the 5-man, the odd front. The even front would be a 6-man. What do you see with this next clip that's going on here with the Ravens again?
Well, this is another gap scheme. So this is a power gap scheme. So now they're going to kick out with Ricard, who's basically a lineman. They're going to kick out with him, and they're going to bring the backside guard with one linebacker in the box. Again, because they're in a 6-man front here, there are no double teams, but the entire offensive line gets to have great angles to the guy inside of them. So we like to step inside with our near foot towards the center, take anything in that gap to the next level, which would be the linebacker. And the rules with the gap scheme remain the same regardless of the front. So in a zone scheme, you have so many rules and regulations. With a gap scheme, you're looking for a double, but if everything is messed up and there's lots of people, just step inside and get off the ball. And that's what the Ravens do to these fronts, is they're stepping inside hard, they're washing the front side, and they're getting good kickouts and up through by their big guys.
So what can the quarterback do in that? If you're bringing that many guys at the line, man on man, that gives quarterback that can run only one guy to beat, correct?
Yes, and with the Browns, they don't have to have anything new. So that counter game, they can read the backside end. If they do decide to run zone, which you can still run zone, I just don't think it's as proficient without the double teams. You can run the zone read. You can run some easy RPOs, especially some simple slants with the number 2 and 3 receiver. You can just add on to what you do without having to change those offensive linemen. And if you talk to any offensive coordinator at any level, they just want those offensive linemen to have the same rules regardless of what's going on with everybody else. Those linemen want to know who they have, and they let all the skill guys do whatever they want. But yeah, when you add the running quarterback in there, now you're adding a dimension that can really hurt a defense.
So the other thing that we kind of touched on at the very beginning, the Browns can potentially attack the Steelers secondary, and that's the next clip we're going to see.
Well, Wallace is a pretty good corner. Sutton's a pretty good corner. Got a guy named Arthur Millette, who's their nickelback. He's a good player. He's real aggressive. So he's one of those typical nickelbacks in the NFL right now, where they like to play along the line of scrimmage. They like to get involved in the run game. They have run gap integrity, gap rules, CD gap rules at times, but they are susceptible to coverage. And if the Browns can get Njoku, or they can get Cooper and DPJ in the slot, this is a match that they can really take advantage of. Millette is a guy who struggles with double moves. He struggles with guys who are elite route runners, and Cooper might be the most elite route runner in the NFL. So I think that's a matchup. I think the Browns match up well with all their secondary people of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I really think this Millette guy is a guy they can attack. But he'll make his plays along the line of scrimmage. They got to attack him in the pass game.
All right, so if we flip sides of the ball, when you look at the Steelers' offense, pretty physical, a young quarterback. What do you see on tape that the Steelers do and want to do offensively?
Well, they're going to run. They're mostly an outs. They don't pull many guys. They had one back power against the Ravens. They want to run the ball downhill. They want to run outside zone, and they want to run split zone or inside zone. And basically all split zone it means is that there's no read on the backside. They're actually going to, where everybody runs where the Browns would run a zone read and read that backside end. A split zone just means you're bringing a guy backside to block that end. So it's a true run play with no, you can run a little RPO off it, but in terms of run game wise with quarterback, it's a true, just a true zone play. They're very physical up front. Najee Harris wants to run downhill, 100 miles per hour. Their backup Warren is the same kind of mentality. They seem to have a different level of confidence now on offense. They're very, very physical. Pickett's a guy you can kind of attack. He's young. I think they can do some different things with him, but right now they want to run the ball downhill with Harris as much as possible.
Well, you mentioned Harris, Najee Harris. The first thing we're going to take a look at here is going to be the outside zone.
So yeah, this is basically outside zone against the Ravens. Ravens get their strong safety up here off the edge here, so it takes away the double teams, but they're good enough, they're athletic enough for, again, in that zone scheme, they're going to kind of move those guys laterally. So they're going to horizontally displace those defensive linemen and use those big bodies and create cutback lanes. And Harris is running at a very high level with physicality right now. So they're going to have to crowd the line of scrimmage, and they're going to have to make Pickett beat them.
All right, so that one is the outside zone. We're going to take a look. This next one is what you referred to as the split zone. Tell us what you see here. And again, it's going to be Najee Harris.
So you're going to see Connor Hayward, Cameron's younger brother. He's going to come from the top of the screen. He's going to come down, and he's going to actually kick out this backside, this end at the bottom of the screen. Pierre-Paul, JPP. So he doesn't get a great kick out, but he gets contact with them. And all they're trying to do with the zone, any zone scheme, inside, outside zone, they're trying to create lanes. But the thing that you want to watch here, watch the left side of their line when the play starts again, and watch the movement they get on the Ravens, really good Ravens defensive line. It's really, really good movement. That left guard, that left tackle, they get tremendous movement on that Ravens defensive line with inside zone, either a double, and there's a man block down here by himself. They do a really good job. They're very physical right now.
All right, we mentioned the rookie quarterback has had 2 game-winning drives the last couple of weeks. So Kenny Pickett has gotten it done late in games. What do you see here? What are some of the points that you notice in this offense with Pickett?
Well, they keep it very simple with him. Very simple routes, very simple concepts. He's at his best when he's on the move here. So this is a game winner to Najee Harris. This is when he's at his best, when he's improvising, getting out of the pocket, finding people, scrambling. When he scrambles, he's looking for, number one, he's looking for Freiermuth. Then he's looking for Deontay Johnson. And Najee Harris is kind of the glue to that offense. But what I think the Browns can do is they can mix up what they do. I think the best thing to make Pickett do is keep him in the pocket. Make that young quarterback go through all his progressions. That's one of the hardest things to do for a quarterback. So when you get pressure as a quarterback, you at least know it's man coverage and you know where you're going with the ball. When it's zone coverage, you have to go through your progressions, which can be very difficult for a young quarterback. And there's times where he gets out of the pocket and he doesn't need to. And that's often because the first read is taken away. So I think the Browns should mix it up. I think they should heat them up. But I also think they should play some coverage, allow that 4-man front to get there and play a tight zone, a tight read forward. We can go through the progressions at times too.
How important some things from the secondary that you think are keys for the Browns?
Well, I think they got to find, like I said, Freiermuth is the key in terms of he's like the security blanket. So he is always going to run. He runs very good routes. He's a kind of a version of Travis Kelce where he's got receiver skills. So he runs very good option routes, very good out routes. He's a nightmare matchup for a secondary. The Browns cannot leave their safeties one-on-one with him. They cannot leave their safeties one-on-one with anybody in the slot. They need to, maybe get Newsome in there in the nickel situation, have him cover the slot. And if they do have a linebacker or somebody who's not a true cover guy, make sure they help over top. Again, I think that's been part of the success with Delpit is that they've allowed him to play deep and playing his strengths and not setting him up for failure, which has allowed him to play at a very high level now. So they just got to find Freiermuth. They got to find Deontay Johnson. The other guys got to prove themselves. Sims made a good catch last week on the game-winning drive, but he didn't do a ton up to that point. But for sure, the key is finding Freiermuth, especially on those third down attempts.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good film breakdowns, cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Straight ahead, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Jack, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the time and the insight. Let's take a look at the Browns roster. When you look ahead to 2023, in terms of the salary cap, are the Browns going to be able to make the necessary upgrades to improve this team? And what areas do you think they target to improve?
Yeah, so they'll go into next season. The salary cap's expected to be around 225 mil, which is a nice step forward. It's about 208 million this year. But that only leaves them with 2 million spare. But what they'll do to create space, I think John Johnson will probably be shown the door. And the other one is just to restructure Watson's contract. That's not a pay cut. People freak out when they hear the word restructure. All that is just converting his base salary to a signing bonus. He gets paid up front. Happy days. Who wouldn't want their year's salary straight away into their bank account? And then they are allowed to spread that salary cap charge over the next 5 years equally. So that's something I expect them to do. And that way they've got some money to play with. They're not going to spend through all of that, but they can go out and make a few key additions and they'll be backloaded like all the other deals.
And you see, if they make those moves, you think they have in the neighborhood of $38 million with just potentially those two moves?
Yeah, so they'll do that there. They won't rush to the Watson restructure because if Lamar Jackson gets tagged, it's the average of the top 5 salaries. So by waiting on restructuring Watson, they'll actually cost the Ravens an extra $1 million or $2 million. So why wouldn't you just wait?
Absolutely. All right, one of the areas that we've talked about probably to death, how do you rebuild the defensive line? And I know you have some ideas about that. And again, this is from last year. So you were kind of the mindset a season ago that they should not re-sign Jadeveon Clowney, and you kind of thought breaking it up and spreading it around was the way to go. So take us through your thoughts there, and then let's go back to building the offensive line moving forward.
Yeah, so the thought last year was don't spend it all on Clowney, spread that money over, go get someone like Jerry Hughes, who's had a phenomenal year in Houston, and then someone, whether it's Ingram, Okoronkwo, both really good players, because the difference with the defensive line, compare it to, say, the O-line, is you rotate, because, say, a Myles Garrett, a Clowney, they're only going to play about 70% of snaps. So what happens when they're on the sideline? Because, hey, if you go through a long drive, well, you don't want to be him sat on the sideline watching Josh Allen score a touchdown because you've taken your star players off the field. So my vision of it is very much have depth. You want at least 3 guys who are constantly going to get pressure. And as well, injuries happen. The last thing you want is you lose one of your 2 stars and then suddenly the whole thing falls apart. And that's why lots of people want to bring in Jerome Payne. Let's just have Garrett and Jerome Payne and all of our issues are solved. Great. What happens for the 30% of the time they're both on the bench getting a breather? You then end up with an absolute mess. Whereas you could bring in a room where, and it is literally going to be those 2, maybe Winovich, and you've got rookie picks. And that is your entire D-line room. All 9 guys, defensive tackle, edge. Go with this formula that I proposed last year of spread that money around. Well, suddenly you've got, say, in the edge room, you've got Garrett, you've got Okoronkwo, you've got, whether it's, say, Melvin Ingram. You've then got Wright, you've got Thomas, and D-tackle. Matt Ioannidis is a guy I would love to bring in. I'd rather pay $6 million to Matt Ioannidis than throw $14 million potentially at Jerome Payne. Bring back Taven Bryant, who's had a great second half of the season. Happily let Jordan Elliott go, and then bring in some cheap guy like Fox, Winfrey. The solution isn't draft. You fix your team in needs by going to free agency, and that's what I think they should go out and do.
The other thing we mentioned was JJ3, John Johnson III. Likely a potential salary cap guy. What is the number with that, and how do you arrive at it?
Yeah, so it's 9.75 million is the decision they need to make. And lots of people, they just look at the dead cap number and freak out. And it's the wrong place to go, because if you're looking at, well, what's the decision on a person, you need to look at how much does the team have to pay them in this one season. And that's a with him, I've got to come off the top of my head now, 8.75 million of base salary, 1 million of roster bonus. So they'll need to decide really early. I think they've got about the 19th of March. They'll need to make a decision, and because he's then guaranteed and gets paid $1 million. So it's one, they'll make the early decision. Whether they keep him or not, that's the number, because Andrew Berry backloads lots of deals to create salary cap space. You're paying the player up front in cash, but you then backload it and spread that on the salary cap. So they're not going to worry about that. The same as Austin Hooper last year. Whether you kept him or moved him, it's what you're going to pay him in cash in 2023, because cash then leads into what is effectively the salary cap.
So as you look at it, are there any other guys that would be salary cap issues, questions, or who are the guys that you just kind of listen out for to see if they are in fact going to be affordable under what the Browns are going to do?
Yeah, the obvious one to look to is Jakeem Grant. Just over $3 million. Do you really want to pay $3 million to a guy coming off an Achilles that he's signed to the roster because he should be quick, should be really mobile? That injury is going to be a factor. And as well, hey, I'd rather pay that to a wide receiver that's going to start and be your wide receiver 3 than a guy that he's more of a gadget. You can probably get from, say, Darden, the return ability. The other big one, he's a free agent, is Pocic. Lots of people would love to see him come back, but I struggle to see it. You're probably looking at around $5.5 million because, hey, he's been phenomenal this year. But is he suddenly one of the best centers in the entire league? Or is it the fact that he's got a future Hall of Famer, potentially Bitonio on his left? He's got Teller, who's really, really good on his right. He's got a coach in Bill Callahan. This is a guy a year ago that no team in the league wanted to offer a starting job to. He lost the battle in training camp to Nick Harris. Yes, the results have been good, but he's spending $145 million on 4 offensive linemen over the next 3 years. Not really sustainable, if I'm going to be honest, with a big contract quarterback like Deshaun Watson. So I expect him to be gone. And there's a couple of guys, Jordan Elliott, you've got Harrison Bryant, both getting an increase in their pay due to something called the Proven Performance Escalator, which just rewards players if they've had lots of snaps over the last 3 years. So those two guys, it won't be decisions early in the offseason. It'll be held right towards the end of camp, but just people to keep an eye on that might be a cut. And you go, hey, why is this guy getting cut at the end? Because their base salary is going to go up from about $1 million to about $2.6 million. That's going to be a factor because, hey, you can get a cheap veteran who can do a good job, save some money, and then you put it into a starter somewhere else.
So is your thought that at center it might end up being Nick Harris again? He got hurt really early in camp, like the first play of the first preseason game. Is that your thought? That's where they turn back to for their center?
Yeah, I think it'll be a battle between Nick Harris and another cheap free agent they can get. And hey, if you're a cheap free agent and you can't get a starting job, where are you going to go? The first call your agent's going to make is to Cleveland and go, hey, you've done this wonder for Pocic. I want to come here. 1 year prove-it deal. I'm going to come really cheap because you've shown what that can do for a player. So I think you bring in the two and you let them battle it out. At the end of the day, he's had one start at center. It was Christmas Day. I was out there against the Packers and he kept Kenny Clark quiet. The guy's done really well and he beat Pocic out in camp. Lots of people want to forget that and sort of move past. That is a lot of proof they've seen behind the scenes. I think he'll be perfectly fine. He's got 2 phenomenal guards either side of him. And hey, you find me a better O-line coach in the NFL that's still coaching, and you won't. It's Bill Callahan.
So before we take a break, just an overall feeling. Are the Browns and Andrew Berry in decent shape relative to the salary cap, or are you going to start feeling the crunch a little bit?
Yeah, there'll be pressure over the next 2 years, and I think it's about making the right decisions. I don't think you'll see any big splashes this offseason. DPJ gets extended, and other than that, you might get like one guy like a Jesse Bates potentially. There might be a splash in free agency if John Johnson moves on. You're not going to see, hey, let's add $20 million a year Coopers and stuff like that. It's more going to be the little middle of the road moves. And there'll be some tough stuff. I don't think too much this season. It might just be Pocic. Next season, they'll have to make some tough decisions, but that's fine. I would rather be making tough decisions going, we've got so many good players, we can't keep everyone, than the decisions we used to make in the past of all of our players are basically trash. Who are we going to pay in free agency and then regret?
Fair enough. Jack Duffin and I from the Orange and Brown Report going to take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk to Jack about what the Browns can do with Deshaun Watson's contract and get crazy with something that could be an interesting trade prospect. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. So, Jack, one of the things that concerns Browns fans, the amount of money that they're paying Deshaun Watson. It's guaranteed. It's $230 million. It's fully guaranteed. What do the Browns do with his contract long term so it doesn't become restrictive, if you will, relative to the rest of the roster?
Yeah, so what they'll do this year is they'll do that restructure. They'll convert the signing bonus, to, the base salary to signing bonus, and kick that can down the road for another year. Then the interesting one's going to be what they do in the 2024 season. What I expect them to probably do is they might do that one more time and just kick the can, bring that number right down, because the advantage with a quarterback is, and when you're kicking these salaries down the line, you only want to do it with players that you know are around for a little while. If they're around for a little while, you can kick that out and it's fine. What you don't want to do is, hey, this guy's got 2 years left, let's do it. You get into messy problems then. So I expect them to do that. And then after year 3, they'll get back around the table, and I expect an extension at that point. Hey, fingers crossed he's good enough that we'll want him around, but I expect them to extend him then, because that's the point where you're getting into the final 2 years of his 5-year deal. You don't want to keep kicking the can. You extend him, probably add another 5 years on the back end. It might be fully guaranteed again, fine. If he's playing well, happy to keep paying the bill. And then they'll just keep kicking that. And then what you can do is when a player goes to retire, hey, if you know it's coming and he goes, hey, I've got 2 more years in the league and I'm done, you just go all in, go crazy, hey, thinking like what the Saints have done, what the Patriots did with Brady. Just throw the kitchen sink at it. This is the best chance you've got. Go win, hopefully, another Super Bowl, because if they've done that before, go all in again in the final 2 years. And that risk it all, because then, hey, he retires, go have a rookie quarterback for a couple of years. Who really cares? If you win a Super Bowl in those final 2 years, no one's going to complain.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this was kind of interesting. So, by all accounts, the Arizona Cardinals likely to undergo a massive change. Kyler Murray underwent ACL surgery, so he's not going to be around for a little bit. Likely that Cliff Kingsbury is one of those guys that finds out Monday that the organization is moving on from him. So there's a guy there that's kind of interesting, DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver who has played with Deshaun Watson. And we take a look at the tweet. So there was a lot of talk about how could the Browns potentially try to get Hopkins. We're not sure they're going to trade him, but it's an interesting proposition. Arizona needs O-line help without question. You think Teller and a fourth for Hopkins. It's not that much money additionally in cap over the next 2 years. So, again, we're not saying this is likely to happen, but you're saying this is something that they might think about.
Yeah, so there's two things to take into account with trading for a player. You've got to stump up the picks and assets to go and get him. And people thinking, hey, it's going to be like a fifth like Amari Cooper. It's not. They were going to cut Amari Cooper and they were just begging for a team to take them on. Hopkins is a valuable player. I think they'd happily keep him if there's not a good offer. So I think you're probably looking at a second, maybe it's a third and later pick. And the Browns really aren't in a position where they can give away a pick that high, the fact that they don't have a first-round pick. And you need to keep adding cheap rookie players, else it all goes to the wall, a.k.a. the Rams are a perfect example. So what can you do to get that, the pick asset, and throwing in a player is the obvious solution? And then the other side is, hey, you can't be paying everyone on the offensive side of the ball $10 million plus a year. It's just not sustainable in the NFL. So you have to go, hey, we need to save some money here. For me, Teller's one I look at, had phenomenal first halves of the last 2 years, and the second halves haven't been as strong. I find it easier to replace a guard. You can find someone, Froholt had 4 games at guard, replacing Teller was really good. Not great as center, but he isn't a center. You've got Michael Dunn, who's played well. You can go out and find a good guard. Whereas, hey, people are crying out and going, hey, we want more wide receiver help. If you're going to make a big splashy move, this is one that I think you could do it, because you're moving off of a player, which brings the trade cost down, and it also frees up some money on the salary cap. So I think you get that balance there. What I think will probably happen, they'll probably use their second round pick on a wide receiver, and that's where the solution will be. But this is, hey, fun. Throw the debate out there. Give people a sense of, well, what does it look like if we want to go and fix this? And hey, we've seen it. Zeitler for Vernon was a trade in the past. So people are willing to move around guards and things to find that solution.
Jack Duffin, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jack. Make sure you check him out. Jack Duffin, Orange and Brown Report, always really good stuff. Before we go, each week in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program, we recognize a role model student from somewhere in the state of Ohio. Today we head to Walsh Jesuit High School. Zach Halligan, a senior at Walsh, a leader not only in the classroom but on the basketball court as well for the Warriors. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is proud to salute Zach Halligan, this week's Shining Star. Senior Zach Halligan is Walsh Jesuit's only returning starter from a season ago, and a big reason why the Warriors have been able to knock off both St. Ignatius and St. Vincent St. Mary in the early part of this season.
His statistics are great. He's averaged about 15 points a game. He's our leading scorer. He's our leading rebounder. I think he's second on the team in assists. He leads the team in steals, but in some ways it's the things that he does that don't necessarily show up in the stats that are so valuable. We ask him to guard the other team's best wing player just about every game, and he does that really, really well.
Halligan is the type of player that can impact the game in a number of ways and makes the other players on the court a little bit better.
In every way imaginable. Our practices are better. We play better. We know that he's going to show up every day. Like I said, he's consistent, so he's going to be there every day. You don't have to worry about his effort level. Is there something that he's going to show up ready to lead by example.
The competition and the energy that comes from it. I feel like the drive and everything, just playing it gives you so much energy, and it's so fun.
When you have somebody who works as hard as he does, as consistently as he does, it's just something that you can't coach it. Like you can only get that from peer to peer.
Like all Walsh Jesuit students, Halligan is involved in a number of community volunteering programs. His favorite is Labra.
That's where we go and we give food and have conversations with the homeless. And we go around in a small van and we deliver the food, and it's really good with the connections you can make with people that don't really have much in their life.
In the classroom, Zach excels as well. He has above a 4-point grade point average and is exploring all his options academically for college.
Math. Math is one of my strong subjects. I feel like I always understood math, so it's just come easy to me. I don't know if I really want to go into like a career with math. I know anatomy. That's like something like around training, I think that's where I would see myself going, but I don't think math is where I would end up.
Halligan is obviously well-rounded and mature beyond his years. He's learned an important lesson by being involved in a number of different things.
Time management. There's always time to do extra stuff and stuff that you maybe could push to the side, but I think that time management comes down to balancing basketball after school, and then during the day, if you have a break, that's when you could do your homework. I think that's really where I fit it in.
Those will be very valuable skills next year when he heads off to college. Zach wants to continue his basketball career as well as his education and figures to have a number of options to do so.
Growing up around basketball, and my dad played basketball in college, and just the love I have for the game, I want to play as long as I can. So I think going to college and playing is what I meant to do, and I always want to go, and I just want to go play.
I think he has an opportunity to play at kind of the upper levels if he wants to. That'd probably be a little different experience than playing at a small college like I've coached at, the OAC schools that are very interested in him. And so I think a lot of it comes down to what he wants to, kind of what he wants those 4 years to look like. And but the good news is I think that there's a wide array of opportunity there, kind of that can match kind of what he's looking for.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. Well done, Zach Halligan. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4, talking plenty of Browns, wrapping up the 2023 season. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.